Welcome to another Superior Health Wednesday. We've got Jim LaJoy, Executive Director of Superior Health Foundation. How are we doing this week?
I'm doing great, doing great.
Thank you for being back here with us. And today we kind of want to talk about the people who are really helping the decisions and guiding who gets help and how the funding is distributed. Talking about the Board of Directors for Superior Health Foundation. Um, and they're a really good representation of so many different UP communities. If you kind of want to talk
Yeah,
about who the board is, who makes it up, and what their role is.
absolutely. So, one of the things I want to touch upon early on here is that when we were formed, when the Spear Health Foundation was formed back in September 1st, 2012, before that, we were the Marquette General Foundation. We basically had a board of directors that was comprised of Marquette County folks. Well, with our evolution and moving to Spirit Health Foundation and our territory expanding all across the Upper Peninsula, it was inherent and important in our bylaws that we expand our reach for our board of directors. So we have a board of directors that represents the entire Upper Peninsula. We have 13 members strong. We have 4 or 5 individuals that come from Marquette County, but we have representation in Houghton, over in Ironwood, in Manistee, and areas like that, and Iron Mountain and Escanaba, that really, help us understand what the issues are and help us to discern what is important in their communities. So kind of what their role is, in addition to serving on the board of directors and being part of various committee structures that we do, we kind of look at them as ambassadors because, they have their ear to what's going on in the community. So I really rely on our directors to know what the pulse is in the communities, and if they're hearing what some health needs are or what exactly is happening. I'm always open to hearing from them, and that helps us a lot in our decision making, and it helps us when we're figuring out, areas that we're going to concentrate on for our grant making. So they play just an invaluable role, and they played an incredible role getting us off the ground and, making sure that we were on solid footing when we started.
And looking at some of the folks that are on the board, you've got a really good representation of a lot of different backgrounds. You've got at least one CPA, you've got doctors, you've got a lot of other professionals. If you could kind of talk about who are the people, who makes up your board, and what are their areas of expertise?
You're right. And I think that's very, very important to us. I've changed quite a bit over the years in that I used to be prescribed to the theory that you really need to have on your board of directors, an accountant. You need to have a banker. You need to have a doctor, a physician, a business owner, and all those things are very, very important. But kind of the philosophy that we've adopted over the last few years is really, number one is you have to have an interest in health and improving the health and well-being of people in the Upper Peninsula. And you have to be invested in what we do. We are a working board. So, getting back to what you were talking about, I mean, we have some business owners on our board. We have a retired nurse that's on our board, a couple of doctors, as you said, a CPA. We've got a banker. We've got somebody who works in the school systems, on the higher education level. That's very, very important. And then we have a couple of retired folks that bring a tremendous amount of wisdom and knowledge about what is going on in the Upper Peninsula and how could we kind of connect the dots to do our role as efficiently as we possibly can to make sure that we're knowing about the health issues that are out there and how we can work together and help problem solve.
And I think having that diversity, all those other backgrounds and all those skill sets coming together really helps, especially from also having people from all those different communities. How does that help in your conversations what are those conversations like when you meet as a board of trying to decide, how do we allocate funding? What are the projects that are worth investing in?
Well, it really comes back to the committee structure that we have been. And one of the committees that we have is obviously our grants committee. And we've talked about our grants committee and the decisions that they make. And, the grants committee often has discussions about what's important, what do we need to be focusing on. And then we eventually bring it back full circle to the full board and make recommendations to them based upon the knowledge and what we have. But what's nice about our board of directors is, not only are we diversified, but we also have a number of different skill sets for the various committees that we have. We have a governance and nominating committee that's responsible for our policies, our procedures, and also vetting potential board directors and that process. And we could talk about that in a minute. We have our finance and audit committee. We have a fundraising committee that's actively working on ways that we can increase dollars to come into Spirit Health Foundation. And then we have our events committees, our special events committees that work on our gala, on our golf event, and are painting the Peninsula pink. So, with all of those diverse bodies coming together, they all have talented people that are spearheading that and are chairpersons, that they work very well in that vacuum on the committee level, but they also work extremely well conversing with other people on various other committees. So we have this synergy that really happens outside of board meetings. And then, like I said, comes full circle when we, eventually meet, every other month for our board meetings.
Well, and let's go back to that vetting process that you were talking about.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I'll tell you, we have a process that's in place. We have a matrix that we keep pretty active. And what we essentially do is, so we have our board of directors, we have terms of 3 years. You can serve up to three terms, so 9 total years. And sometimes we stagger different people coming in, particularly if somebody leaves the board early for whatever reason, a health condition or other responsibilities. So we have a matrix, and on that matrix, we have it broken down by counties, all 15 counties in the Upper Peninsula. And through our time and through our relationships that we have with people in the communities, we're always looking for, upstanding people in those communities that, have a nonprofit background, have an interest in health, and have the time and resources to put into Spirit Health Foundation. So we vet those names and we put those names together. And then when we have situations, and we actually have one coming up here in the next year or so, we're going to have about 3 to 4 people that are going to be rotating off of our board. So we looked at the geographic locations, the kind of skill set that we're looking for. And then our governance and nominating committee will meet and start discussing who are some potential candidates, who are some potential people that we can reach out to see if they have an interest in joining our board. So typically what happens is the chair of the governance and nominating committee, along with another committee member and myself, will schedule a time. We'll have lunch or breakfast to meet with them. And it's mainly a filling out process. It's mainly, tell us a little bit more about yourself. We're going to tell you a little bit about us. And we want to get a feel if this is something that would be of interest to you. And we make it really clear going in that this is really a working board. I mean, if you're on our board, you're going to be on at least 1 or 2 committees, and you're going to be, asked to contribute. And we're going to be asked to, provide input for that. So from that information, we will bring that back. We'll have a discussion, and then our committee essentially will make a recommendation then to the full board about a particular person. And obviously for us, we come back to that diversity. We want to have a good mixture of male, females. We want to have a good mixture of young and those that are older, that are retired, because it's important to have that those new energies, those new directions, but it's also incredibly important to keep that institutional knowledge that we have, because some of our board directors, because of grandfathering, there's 2 in particular that have been with us right from the get-go. And unfortunately, they're going to be term limited here in a couple of years. But the good side of that is we'll have an opportunity between now and then to bring some potential new directors on give them an opportunity to learn, and then, able to carry forward in a pretty smooth fashion.
And I think it's a smart way to approach that process of not just having that decision making process being on one person by, you're meeting with all these different people to ensure that it's a good fit, because they have to take on all these different roles. They're given all these different responsibilities to make sure that it's just about as much of being a good fit for them as it is for everything else that you all are doing. So that's, I'm sure, puts a lot of people at ease of, is this a good fit or not? You'll know. Like, it takes all the question out of it.
Absolutely. And it's really a real give and take discussion. We're learning about them, they're learning about us. And during that discussion, we have a document that basically spells out the roles and responsibilities of a board director. Essentially, it'll go through, we meet every other month. Every director is expected to be on at least one committee, if not two. They have a role of governance and helping us with our direction. So it lays that out, the responsibilities in their communities about spreading the word, being an ambassador, also being financially invested in Superior Health Foundation. Each one of our board directors is expected to give a gift yearly. We don't put an amount on it, but we want 100% participation from our board, because that's essential for me and other folks in our office when we're talking to potential donors, that we have 100% buy-in. So, there are no surprises when we recruit board directors. And, these board directors come highly recommended from people that are on our board of directors and on our committees. Another thing, too, that I'd like to mention along these lines, Ben, is oftentimes we have committees. We talked about our committee structure. Well, to be on our committees doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a board director. So we'll have at-large people from committees from different areas that serve on our committees, because they have a skill set that we're looking for. The great thing about that is they are a committee member. They're involved in our committee structure. And if they like what we're doing, it's a wonderful training ground to potentially look at them as a potential board director. And we've done that a number of different times. It's kind of like that easing in process where there are no surprises. And, thankfully, it's worked out incredibly well. And, for me, I'm just tremendously blessed, because I have 13 board directors. I have 13 bosses, but they're all wonderful. They're all wonderful people that understand their roles and responsibilities. We have great dialogue. We don't point any kind of fingers. We always look for solutions. And it's refreshing and humbling for me to be able to be in a position where you've got such great people to surround yourself with.
And it sounds like it's a positive environment. You talk about that, you have a lot of great bosses. People usually hope for just one.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're always recruiting, that you're always looking at who might be next, so it's not, no one's ever caught by surprise. And that really helps your foundation and all the people that you help, helps it not stall out by then having to wait and get caught up whenever things, so you're always thinking forward and trying to plan ahead for all that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. And that's vitally important. And one of the discussions that we often have with our board directors, when we know their term is coming up, the chair of the Governance and Nominating Committee will reach out to them and say, you're doing a wonderful job. We'd love you to serve another term. And in most cases, they do. They like being on our board, and we like that. But in those rare instances where, they may have family issues or some other things, when they tell us in advance that they're probably going to rotate off the board, one of the great blessings for us is we've had a number of board directors who have said this, but they've also said, but I have somebody in mind. I have a person or two in mind I think that would be a good replacement in our area that I think would serve the foundation well. And we've utilized that a few times to add to our board matrix, to vet those candidates and to see if they will be a fit. And in some cases, as I said, it's worked out really, really well. And, we particularly appreciate that kind of transparency and that kind of knowledge to help us as we move forward.
It speaks very well of you and what you all do, that you have that sort of endorsement and you have that whole process. And I think that just shows that you have all that kind of support for your mission as a foundation and what you're trying to do for the Upper Peninsula. Is there anything with the board that they do or that you've experienced that people wouldn't expect? That's just, having the open forum to talk about it that you'd like to just share.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and I think it's a great question. One of the things that I've been incredibly impressed with, I think when you think sometimes of board directors, you think of these folks that are making incredibly impactful decisions for the betterment of the organization. And we have that. We've had great leadership over the years, and I'm very, very thankful for the folks that we've had. But the thing that I think kind of stands out is the listening skills of our board directors. I don't know if I've ever been around a group of people that are as good as listeners as they are. They take the time, they listen. And in the fundraising business, you have to be good listeners because it's all about the donor. It's all about your well-being. And they're great doing that. The other thing that I think is important to recognize with our board directors is that they're wonderful ambassadors. We look at them as ambassadors in their community. And what I mean by that, Ben, is that when they're out and about, let's say they're out in Delta County, Dickinson County, and a topic of discussion comes up that's health related, they're wonderful at sharing information, whether it's in a one-on-one setting or a group setting, to share. I happen to be on the board of directors for the Superior Health Foundation. And what we're talking about, I think, is something that would be of interest to our executive director and his team. I'd like to point you in the right direction and talk to him about that. So what they do is they are great at not only listening, but they open up doors for sponsorships, for gifts, and more importantly, or equally as important, I should say, is finding out what those health needs are in the community. We found a lot by just that type of discussion and knowing what's going on in communities. And once they know that we have a vested interest in helping them with grant making, the whole tone of the conversation changes immensely because we're here to help. So our directors play an incredible role in doing that. And we talk about it all the time. We have educational sessions, usually at our board meetings at least 2-3 times a year, where we'll go over the roles and responsibilities and how important that facet is. Because with the size of the UP that we've talked about in the past, it's impossible for our small team to be everywhere. Yet we have directors in a number of the counties that are representative and can find out what the needs and wants are.
Well, you got me thinking about that, of just, they're the ambassadors, they're out in the community, and their listening skills. And that's something that you don't have to be on the board of directors to listen to other people. But if you hear someone that has a good idea that might fit, that they can direct them to your board of directors, that they can direct them to Superior Health Foundation, so that you have more ambassadors out there of just listen to what the needs are and then bring them to you. And there might be some good things that come out of it, so that you have an even bigger reach.
Oh yeah, and there are good things that come out of it. Over my tenure here, I could think of scores of examples where a director was in a community setting, something came up, and they talked about an issue, and somebody was like, well, I've heard of the Superior Health Foundation, but I don't really know what they do. Well, the director, can share information about what we are, what we do, and put us in touch with, how we can help them. And that has led to a number of emails. It's led to a number of phone calls, because we talk about this, that you don't know what you don't know. And there are times that we may not know what is a particular interest in the community, but the directors help bridge that gap and help open up those doors. And those methods of communication have, led to great partnerships, but it's also led to some grants that we've we've provided to communities that we otherwise wouldn't have known about.
Well, hopefully people see this and, getting that information, that awareness out there of who the board is, who are the people in their community that they can come to and talk to, can help that process and bring some more ideas to the forefront and be the next big project or just something that can help better serve our communities.
Absolutely. And I think one of the final things that I'd like to mention too is that, we're always vetting potential candidates, and anyone watching this that may have an interest or know of someone that could potentially be put in the pool for consideration, have them reach out to me, and we'll talk about it. We'll put their name in there because, we're looking for people that really have a pulse on the community, really are about improving the health and well-being of people, are invested in the work that we do. And as I said earlier, we've been very, very fortunate in that I've had such a great board of directors that have had such great leadership that it's made my job easier because they're so good at what they do.
Good. Well, is there anything else that I know we're talked about a lot of different things, but anything else about the board, about the process, or any other words for potential candidates like to say before we conclude for today?
No, I think that basically does it. We just had a meeting about a month or so ago, and we looked at our board matrix. We looked at what we have happening, and in 2022, we're going to have at least 2, and possibly 3 board directors that will be leaving us. And we already have some plans in place for some potential people to fill those vacancies, those 3-year terms. But again, if there's someone interested or knows of someone that has an interest and would like to be put into consideration, it's a process. It's a process. We just don't look out in the crowd and say, boy, that person would make a good board director. Right. It doesn't work that way. We go through a process and make sure that it's a fit for both of us. And that has served us really, really well. So anytime we're armed with that type of information and that type of background, it helps us in our decision making.
Well, I know that with your process and with the people you have in place, the next folks that step into those positions will be welcomed, and they'll be the right people to help your mission along. So thank
Absolutely.
you for talking with us about that and helping us understand who these people are, what they do, and how more people can get involved. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben.